Was it wrong of me to offer to pay for my friend when she said she couldn't afford to be my maid of honor? How do you deal with someone who thinks they're invited to your wedding but definitely won't be? Is it mean if I invite my whole family to go wedding dress shopping except for one of my fiance's sisters? Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Hello Hayes podcast. Today we're talking about, it's a wedding-themed episode, though I don't want you to run away if you yourself are not into weddings, going to weddings, getting married. Because while these letters are from three brides, they dive deep into interpersonal dynamics, complicated friendship and relationship issues that I think exist like outside of the, wedding complex, though they certainly are magnified when people get married. We've got themes of drifting friendships and when someone thinks you're closer than you actually are. We have merging family dynamics and when you think someone's, the sister of your partner doesn't like you and kind of how to deal with that when it comes back to the wedding. And we're also talking about money and friendship and what to do when someone says they can't afford your event, yet you've watched them go to other events over time, and when it's okay to push and when maybe you should pull back. So let's just dive right in with our first letter. Is it toxic to offer to pay for your friends' expenses when they say they can't afford to take on responsibility at your wedding? Hello, Hayes. My best friend of 13 years said she couldn't afford to attend my bachelorette. I offered to choose a cheaper destination, but was still met with uncertainty. I understood, but was sad that she couldn't be there. Fast forward to asking her to be my maid of honor, and I was shocked again when she said she couldn't afford it. I offered to cover her expenses, and then she had a list of reasons why it wouldn't work for her. This time, I said how hurt I was and how it made me feel like I wasn't important to her. She was recently in 3 other friends' weddings, which took place in the last 3 years. When I brought that up, asking why it was different for me, she said she was in a different place now, and if I didn't understand, then she couldn't give me what I need in a friendship. This led to her cutting off our friendship. Since then, she's been posting every other day about people not respecting boundaries and cutting out toxic people. This has made me feel like I asked for too much. I don't understand where I went wrong and how our 13-year-old friendship is over. I feel heartbroken experiencing these milestones without her, but I'm trying to accept and reflect on what I may have done wrong. I felt like I tried to be understanding and find solutions to have her be a part of this milestone, and I'm having a hard time understanding how if our friendship mattered, she'd be posting such hurtful things. Does my behavior sound toxic to you? Oy. So, the first thing I'd say about this letter is that this behavior, the way this relationship sounds, does not sound like the two of you are on the same page or have been on the same page about where this friendship is. Like a friendship of 13 years, if it is still a North Star bestie friendship, which if you're asking her to be your maid of honor, I'm assuming that's how you feel about her. If both people feel as though you're each other's North Star besties, then this behavior sounds really, something's not adding up. What this sounds to me from the get-go is like one or both of you are not aligned on what this friendship has become or what it actually is. Like, I just don't think that two people who are on the same page about their friendship, I don't think that this could go down in this way. I do think it's possible that somebody who is your North Star bestie might not be able to come to your bachelorette and might not be able to be your maid of honor. Like, I think it's possible to have a close friend who can't do those things, but the way you're describing it here, something sounds fishy. So I want to get to the bottom of this, and we're going to do it by talking about money and friendship, because I think that there's something about this letter that relates to that specifically, but also then take a holistic look at this specific relationship, because I think there's something that you're missing, and hopefully by talking it out together, you might be able to get that insight that you're looking for. So the question one, like, is it asking for too much to say, hey, I really want you there, I'll pay for all of your expenses, after someone has said they can't or won't do it? I think that the answer is sometimes yes. If someone declines something, if an adult friend declines something that you've invited them to, I think you need to assume that they have thought about it, they've kind of approached it from a lot of angles, and they've made a decision that in most types of relationships, they might not be disclosing like every aspect of that decision. So it might be true that someone can't really swing to go to your, $2,000 bachelorette weekend. I'm making up that number. I don't know how much your bachelorette is going to cost. They might not be able to swing it financially. Now, do they have the money in their bank account? Yes. They might be choosing not to spend it because it doesn't align with their values or what they have with going on at work. Like maybe it has to do with, maybe the decision has to do, there's more to the decision than just money, and they're not sharing that with you. You know, they might not be walking you through every single piece of their decision because it might hurt your feelings. I think there is a bit of like there are like some social cues that you don't really dig deeper. If someone says no to something, you don't always pry to understand why. Money stuff in particular, like a lot of us hold a lot of shame about money and how we spend it and what we can't afford to go to. And there's a chance that by offering to pay for it all of a sudden, you're then putting your friend in a position to like go back on her word. She might have done a lot of I'm giving this person a lot of credit. Granted, I do not know this person, and some of the behavior you described about her posting shit on social media makes her sound does not paint her in such a favorable light. But giving her the benefit of the doubt, like if you didn't already plan your bachelorette with your friend in mind and what she could afford and what anybody could afford, like if you didn't include her in that decision-making process, it's kind of embarrassing for someone to offer to change their entire plan so that you could afford it. I cannot imagine myself agreeing to that. If someone said to me, "Oh, I'll choose a cheaper destination," I'm hoping that you didn't actually use the word cheaper when you were talking to her about it. If someone said, "I'll choose a cheaper destination so you could come," after I'd already made a decision, it would have put me in a tough position. It would have put me in a tough position because I probably wouldn't want to go. I've already decided that. And if you're a person who kind of stands by your decisions, maybe in some situations that could be considered stubborn. I don't know. Putting someone just doubling down and kind of making someone explain and say no again could be pushing the limit in some relationships. Now, are there certain types of friendships where that is appropriate? Absolutely. But I don't think the two of you seem to be on the same page here about this. You invited her to something and she couldn't come because of money. And then you asked her to do something again, and really, maybe instead of just inviting her to be your maid of honor, you could have had a conversation with her about what's going on, that she can't swing the bachelorette, and if you went into that conversation expecting that she'd be able to afford to be your maid of honor when she couldn't afford the bachelorette, that might not have been the most sensitive thing of you. And again, to offer to cover her expenses, you might just be kind of poking at some of her shame. Like it requires a lot of courage to say, I can't afford to do something. And how would I have approached that differently? I would probably consider, instead of saying, let me cover all of your expenses, I would make sure that being a maid of honor wasn't going to cost money. I'm so intrigued all the time when I hear people talk about how expensive it is to like be a maid of honor specifically. Like, is it that much more expensive? Are you putting in that much money? What are these brides asking maids of honors to do? That's a whole other conversation. You mentioned the thing about her being in 3 other people's weddings over the last 3 years. I think it's important for you to realize that 3 years is a long time. A person's friendships can change a lot over 3 years. A person's financial status can change a lot over 3 years. And, after being in 3 weddings, your friend may have realized that she doesn't like doing that. She may have drawn the line in the sand that I don't want to participate in weddings like this anymore. Now, if you two were best friends, North Star besties, sisters, would she just do it anyway or communicate with you better? Yes, which comes back to the point that I don't think this friendship is what you thought it was. And that's really, I think, what's hurtful and hard here, is that this friendship isn't what you thought it was. And maybe you had clues of that before you invited her to your bachelorette. If I kind of zoom out more, is someone saying, I can't come to your bachelorette and I can't be your maid of honor because of money, is that friendship ending? I don't think that's friendship ending. People who are closest to me, we could have that conversation if I asked them to participate and they couldn't swing it. That would not be friendship ending to me. So the fact that it is friendship ending to you, I think you're right to take a look at yourself and to take a look at the friendship and be like, what was I missing here? So let me ask you, like, how has your friendship changed over the last 13 years? 13 years is a long time. Like, is this behavior from her is the fact that she said no really completely out of thin air? Or when you take a look and you're like, oh, have we had deep, meaningful conversations? Have we spent time together? Do I know what's going on in her life? And vice versa. Like, if the answer to these things is like, no, 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 then while you might feel surprised and hurt, the situation may not actually be all that surprising if you look at it from a like unbiased perspective. You mentioned like the posting on social media. I'm really curious about that. Like, is she kind of sharing Instagram quotes from like Instagram therapists about boundaries? And does she do that all the time? Like, is that part of her kind of social media behavior that she shares things to her stories a lot? If so, you might be reading into this. However, has she completely gone AWOL and is like posting her own stories, like typing out her own text about friends who betray you? That's a whole other thing. But when you mentioned her social media posting and like how could a friendship have blown up like this to result in her talking about theoretically you, is posting the way she's posting, whatever it is this out of character for her? Or like, does this seem impulsive? In your letter, you sound really surprised, but what I'm trying to get you to do is to think about what is real. So she's hurt your feelings by saying no. What do you know? What do the facts show you? If you can try to root yourself in some of the facts, it doesn't take the pain away of the fact that you feel perhaps like bamboozled by someone you thought was your best friend, that you're sad this friendship is over. But at least it can help you understand how this might have happened so that you don't feel so blindsided. You say that you want to reflect on where you went wrong. And based on the information here, giving both of you the benefit of the doubt, there's a world where she came to you and said, I can't afford something, and you pushed, which led to her saying, I can't give you what you need. If you can't accept that I can't afford this, and you're going to continue to push when I've said this, then I don't know how to support you. I don't know how to be there. I still think that cutting off the friendship is it's pretty dramatic, right? If you've been friends for 13 years, maybe she was, looking for a reason to end your friendship. Like, I only have the details from your perspective. And again, you're definitely making her sound like she's off her rocker a little bit. Maybe she was looking for a reason to kind of blow everything up. But I can envision a world where I would feel really frustrated if I went to a longtime friend and said, I can't afford to do this, and they questioned me and pushed. That could be a place where you went wrong. You talk about why doesn't she want to be a part of like this milestone for me? And maybe she did want to be a part of the milestone for you, but she wanted to be a guest. I think you probably could have stopped after she said she couldn't afford it. Then you can make decisions about how you want to participate in this friendship moving forward. This whole letter got me thinking about what's the right way to talk about money and your wedding with your friends as the bride. And I remembered the last bachelorette I went to, I really loved that the maid of honor did this. Before they ever even chose the bachelorette destination, they sent out a survey that included a question about like how much everybody was willing to spend, and they had different ranges. So we did that survey, and then before you even needed to commit, like before they needed the exact numbers for the house and everything, the maid of honor sent out another email with, this is the max amount of money. This is the range that we think it's going to be for the weekend, between, let's say, $700 and $1,000, and it won't be more than X. That way, everybody going could understand what they were getting themselves into, and then they could tap out if they could say, hey, I can't swing that, and that would be fine. There's just nothing worse than feeling bamboozled by how much everything is going to cost. So if you are a bride or a maid of honor, like, I think that approach is really, really great. And also, like, I had a COVID wedding, but my bachelorette, I was never having a big bachelorette. I was doing dinner at a restaurant was it going to be a dinner or a brunch? I don't even fucking remember at this point. How crazy is that? It was like devastating at the time. And now 4 years later, I cannot remember if it was a dinner or a brunch. But there was like a set price per person, and I was subsidizing a chunk of it. I think that, yes, it's your weekend. Yes, it's your day as the bride, but that doesn't excuse you. You still need to be considerate of others. And if you're going to ask people to come to a super expensive, faraway bachelorette destination, I would only do that if I was in a position to subsidize a huge chunk of it, or to like treat everybody in some way. And if I couldn't afford to do that, which I could not have afforded to do that, I wouldn't have done it. Separately, I would be prepared as a bride that some people aren't going to be able to afford to do things. And I would prepare myself that if anyone comes to me, I'm not going to make them feel bad, and I'm not going to push it. And even if I had an emotional reaction, I would try really hard to not project that onto them. Maybe if there are certain friends that it's really, really important to me that they're there, before I chose where I was having my bachelorette, I'd get their opinion and I'd say, it's important to me that you come, so here are the different things I'm thinking about, like would love your thoughts, would love your opinion. I know this feels so hard right now, but I want you to trust that your wedding weekend and your wedding will not be tainted by this situation if in reflecting you realize, hey, I probably did push it a little bit. You could reach out and say that to her. Say, hey, I'm sorry that I pushed it when you said you couldn't afford it. I hope you still want to come. I value our friendship, and I'd love to talk about this. You know, if you're open to having another conversation with her, you could say, I'd love to talk about this again. I'm sorry that I pushed your boundary, right? She was setting a boundary and you did push it. If you feel that an apology for that specifically on your end is warranted, I would maybe offer it up as an olive branch and see, perhaps she'll apologize for being abrupt and for being dramatic and posting on social media. If, you know, I don't know if she'd ever actually admit that, but if I had a best friend of 13 years and in reflecting, I'm like, you know what? I did not handle that totally well. And while I now realize that our friendship has changed and things won't be the same again, and I probably won't think of them the same way, like I would like to have them at the wedding. I would like to kind of get rid of the animosity. I maybe would be the bigger person and apologize for my part. How do I deal with someone who thinks they're going to be invited to my wedding, but probably won't be? Hello, Hayes. I recently got engaged to someone I moved to another country for. In the last couple of years since moving, I've lost touch with people in my life who are on the periphery to begin with, while strengthening my relationships with other closest friends. My current issue concerns a high school friend. I didn't consider us very close at the time we were in school, and we've maybe only hung out 3 times in the 13 years since graduating. She did invite me to her wedding, which I attended about 2 years ago, but frankly I was surprised to get the invitation because of our level of non-closeness. She's always thought we were much closer than we are, and I think she continues to. I once heard her say that I'm her best friend from high school, but I would have never described her that way myself. To make matters worse, we fall on very different sides of the political spectrum, and I have very little respect for her beliefs. On Instagram a couple of months ago, she reached out to me about things I was posting, and I chose to engage with her because she reached out in earnest. Our discussion involved a lot of disclosures from me about how her beliefs on things have always made me feel misunderstood and rejected by her and the community we grew up in. She said she'd think about my message and reply later, but never did. We haven't spoken since then, until recently when she congratulated me on my engagement and asked to FaceTime so I could share proposal details and hear wedding plans. Mind you, we've never talked on the phone. I haven't replied yet, other than thanking her for her well wishes, but I have a strong feeling that she thinks she'll be invited to my wedding. I don't plan on inviting her, and I could think of many others that I'd invite sooner. How do I communicate, if at all, that I don't plan to invite her? How do I navigate the inevitable message that I'll receive about how hurt she was to not be invited? I really don't want to hurt her feelings. I'm super nervous about these kinds of friend confrontations. The political one took a lot out of me. I also don't want to invite her just for the sake of protecting her feelings. It feels silly to be well into my 30s and still feel like I have to be connected to people I don't align with out of obligation. How do I approach this? Okay, so I should just start by saying that I definitely don't think you need to invite this person to your wedding. The misaligned political beliefs aside, like I think that's actually a moot point in this conversation because you don't seem to be friends to begin with, right? Just because someone thinks they're going to be invited or might be reaching out of the woodwork to want to be your friend, you do not need to invite this person. And it's funny because there's actually a lot of situations where I'd say you should invite someone to your wedding, even if you don't like them, because it's the right thing to do. I do believe that your wedding day is a day that is about you, and compared to other days, it's a day where you put yourself first, yada, yada, yada. However, it doesn't excuse you from having to care about other people's feelings. And that does come up in like some of my, when I do talk about weddings, because I think people take it's your day, it's your time to shine, this is the one day that's all about you. I think people take that a little bit too far, which is how we like have landed in this, bridezilla, groomzilla complex. People take it too far and forget that they're still a human being with like responsibilities to other people. And you're not immune, right? You're not immune from reality on your wedding. So there are situations where if this person was in your intimate friend group, or if this person was like the significant other of one of your fiance's friends, where I'd say, maybe you still invite her. But this, like, you guys are not friends. You've hung out 3 times in 13 years. You're not friends. So you don't need to feel obligated to invite this person. I don't even want you to feel concerned about this. I do know though that a lot of people do feel concerned about this. Like even when I was getting married, I remember feeling like, can I talk about my wedding with coworkers who I'm not going to invite? Like at the time I was close friends with a few of my coworkers who would have been invited. But then I also had other like work friends who wouldn't have been invited, and like, can I talk to them? So reading your letter just brought up the question for me, like, if you're not going to invite someone to your wedding and you think they might be offended by it, how should you engage with them? And I think there's 2 different strategies based on if you want to be friends with them or if you don't want to be friends. So if you want to be friends with someone and they're not going to be invited to your wedding, I think there's a situation where you can give them a half-honest answer. By half-honest, I mean maybe your wedding list is capped at 150. So it's like a medium to smaller sized wedding, depending on, in the community of weddings that I go to, 150 is kind of like a medium size. You might say, hey, I just want you to know, like, I would have loved to invite you to the wedding, but unfortunately we're having it on the smaller side, and I just wanted to let you know. You could say something like that. Maybe I'd finesse that a little bit more. But if you think that they would be surprised and hurt and you want to be their friend, I think it's better to address it and be straight up. Now, I say that's like a half-honest answer because it is honest that it's small and that there is a guest list, but you're not saying, and there's just other people that we're closer with than you. That's the fine print. They will get that, but you don't need to completely share all of those details. And I would maybe be sensitive about what I talk about in front of them. So if they ask me about the wedding, I'd share, but I wouldn't use that person as like a dumping ground for every thought I have about the wedding, knowing they weren't going to be invited. Now, if you don't want to be friends with someone, you simply don't talk to them about your wedding. That one's a little bit more cut and dry. So this person, you don't want to be friends. You actually aren't friends. You used to be friends. So you have that, you have history with this person, but you currently are not friendly, and you have no interest in becoming friends. So you don't get back to her about FaceTiming to talk about the wedding. You continue to, it sounds like you've already kind of escaped it by not answering that question directly. If she asks you again, if she says, hey, how about that catch up about, I'd love to hear about the wedding. You could say, well, I think there's some world where you can ignore it. You don't need to respond to every single message you get. I do firmly believe that. Or you could say, thanks so much for being excited. Things are hectic right now, but I appreciate you. But I appreciate it, period. And then, let it lie. But I don't think that you should tell her about the wedding. I don't think you should have this FaceTime and talk to her about it if you don't plan on inviting her. The political piece of this complicates this story, and it doesn't. It doesn't really complicate the story because it sounds like you've already made up your mind about whether you want to be friends with her. There's a version of this, though, where you are friends and you do want to be friends, and she sends you this message on Instagram and you sort of get into it about the different posts. In that situation, I would encourage you to have a real conversation off of Instagram. It sounds like you had this back and forth in Instagram DMs, and I don't think that's the most productive place to have a constructive conversation about values. I don't think that's the place to do it. So if you wanted to be friends, I'd say, get on the phone and have level set that like the reason we're having this call is not because either of us are trying to be right, but because we both want to we want to seek understanding. I don't have a perfect playbook for how to have those conversations with people. It's something I think about a lot. Friendships of mine have changed, and I don't know if they've fallen apart, but I want to say now more than ever, but I think it's been this way for a long time. People you went to high school with, people you grew up with, it can be really devastating to see how differently you can see the world. And I don't have a perfect playbook for how to talk about that or how to cope with that loss, but I do think that it is valid to. You can hear me, it's crazy how you can hear in my voice, how the carefulness with which I'm trying to use my words now. Because I think talking, it's hard. It's really hard. Even if you were friends, I'd say you should have a real conversation about whatever it is you two are posting and whatever it is your differences are. And because maybe the two of you, the way we get to a world where we're less divided, I have to believe that it's through two people who see things differently, who have faith in each other and have love for each other, come together and share your perspectives so we can bridge that gap. I have to believe that. So if you wanted to be friends and if you believed in her as a person, I'd say have that conversation. And still, I would also say it's okay to end friendships, discontinue friendships, because the way you see the world and what you believe and what you stand for, what matters to you is no longer compatible. So easier said than done, all of that. But again, I don't think it complicates this story so much because you didn't want to be friends in the first place. Anyway, how do you sit with the discomfort of knowing that you hurt someone's feelings? That's a question that you ask. What do I do when she inevitably is upset that she wasn't invited? Part of being an adult, part of being a human, part of no longer being a people pleaser, living for yourself, making decisions that are best for you, it involves pissing other people off sometimes. You're going to do things that make other people feel uncomfortable things, mad, sad, left out. It is simply a part of life. You cannot try to only make choices that are going to please everybody. Sometimes you're going to do something and someone's going to be upset about it. And you can have empathy for that. You can feel sad and sorry that they're hurting, but it doesn't mean you should do anything differently. So if she reaches out to you and say, hey, I was really hurt that I wasn't invited to your wedding, there's a lot of different approaches you could take. You could say, I'm sorry to hear that. Our wedding was, our closest friends and you and I have fallen out of touch. You could say, I'm sorry to hear that. End conversation. You could not say anything at all because again, it sounds like you only talk 3 times a year. And you just have to trust that you didn't do anything wrong here. You did not do anything wrong here. You do have some obligations, but not everything is an obligation. And if you can look at your life and look at your relationships and confidently say, hey, I actually am obligated to do that, and I'm fine that I'm obligated to do that. I can stand by that obligation, but I can't stand by feeling obligated to invite someone I'm not friends with. Inviting this person falls into the people pleaser category, and as you say, feels silly to be well into your 30s, still living your life that way. You're not. You're not. You don't need to protect this person's feelings. You can still be kind and considerate should it ever come up. You don't need to tell her about how amazing your wedding weekend's going to be and then not invite her, but you do not need to invite her. Is it mean if I invite my whole family to go wedding dress shopping except for one of my fiance's sisters? Hello, Hayes. I'm planning to go wedding dress shopping in a few months and I'm deciding who to invite. I loved your video where you suggested doing an appointment by yourself first, and I'm planning on doing just that. For the second appointment, I want my 2 sisters, mom, and godmother to join. I think it would also be nice to include my mother-in-law and my fiance's 2 sisters. However, I'm worried that inviting my fiance's younger sister is going to make for an unpleasant experience. She's just 1 year younger than me. Ever since me and my fiance started dating, she's blatantly ignored me, avoided me, and overall been cold. I've tried to build a relationship with her, but she seems not to have any interest. She was an hour late to our engagement dinner due to a puppy play date and didn't seem excited for us when we originally told her we got engaged. I'd like to include everyone so that no one feels left out and potentially try to build each relationship. However, I also only want people there who will actually be constructive in the process and are actually happy and supportive of the wedding. What do you think I should do? For starters, maybe this is too direct right off the bat, but I don't think that you need to invite your fiance's sisters at all. That is a lot of people to be present That is a lot of people to be present for wedding dress shopping. And I know some people do that. Like I won't say the name of the place, but I went to one place in New York City that ended up feeling like my sister and I were truly like, we're peeing our pants laughing. And I felt like I was being rude because I couldn't stop laughing. But you know, when you start laughing and you can't stop, and it's actually quite a painful feeling, you're like, this is not appropriate, but my body simply will not stop laughing. We were at this huge bridal warehouse in New York City, and there were people there that came with 20 of their family members in custom embroidered shirts. So I know that people do like to do that. And if you are the kind of person who can feel like comfortable and confident and calm with that many people present, power to you. If you liked my video where I talked about going wedding dress shopping by yourself first, which I'll put that in the description, maybe I'll make that. I made that video a long time ago at this point. Maybe I'll make another one because I'm sure if I watch that video, I'll cringe at how not good it is, because that's something that happens when you make videos for a long time, I guess. I cringe when I read stuff I wrote and shared sometimes like a month ago. So anyway, if you liked that video and you are into the idea of going wedding dress shopping by yourself, I think you might be the kind of person who also potentially wouldn't like being with so many people. So I think it's a nice thing to do to invite your mother-in-law. I would always recommend that people do that. If the relationship is good enough, don't invite your mother-in-law if it's super turbulent. But I think it's a nice thing to do to include the mother-in-law. But I don't think it's necessary to invite the sisters. And if you're feeling anxious about it, I simply just wouldn't. I don't think it's a big deal. Maybe different family dynamics would feel differently. Like if everyone in the family has always invited the sisters, it's been talked about. If you've accidentally made it seem like they are invited, maybe that's different. But I just wouldn't invite them. I don't actually think that inviting your sister-in-law, the youngest sister, to the wedding dress shopping, I don't think that's your main problem here. I think the bigger problem is about this relationship. And I want to just ask you, I want to throw it out there. Have you considered that your sister-in-law does like you, but that she as a person is not who you imagined your future sister-in-law to be? Maybe you imagined your future sister-in-law to be warm and a new sister or a new best friend and super energetic and happy and smiley. Had you sort of created a vision of what that future sister-in-law would be like? Maybe she is on the quieter side, or maybe she's just a little bit moodier as a person. Have you accepted her for who she is rather than for who you want her to be? Because there could be some cloudy glasses that you're wearing where you're perceiving everything as she hates me, she doesn't like me, when she might just be kind of an inflexible, sometimes cranky person. It might actually have nothing to do with you. And it still might feel disappointing that she isn't acting in the way you would wish she would act. But there's a possibility that this isn't so personal, that it's not about you. It's not that she's not excited for your wedding or that she doesn't want you guys to get married. This is just kind of who she is. And a way to think about that could be what do you know about her through your fiance? What has your fiance said about her? If you haven't done any digging, maybe you can and learn about whether this behavior is normal, whether it seems off. And if the behavior towards you is different than how she is, if your fiance is surprised by it, maybe they can have a conversation with her and try to uncover what's going on here and can help bridge that gap. You're taking all of this very personally, which is understandable, but I wonder if there's a way to take it less personally. The puppy play date detail is kind of hilarious. I know that you probably don't think it's funny, but I can picture a person like that. There's absolutely a world, and I get it, where she says, sorry, I'm late, I had a puppy play date. And you interpret that as, you don't give a shit about me and my engagement, you're not happy for us, you don't support us. But there's also people who are just in their own world. And it could still be a character flaw, right? It could still be a weakness, something they should work on. But it might not be that she's not excited about your engagement, right? Maybe she's just chronically late. Maybe she's a little bit selfish. These are all annoying things, but maybe it isn't about you. The 1-year age gap is tricky. It's really, really tricky. You might not be reading into this too much. Maybe she does have some complicated feelings towards you. You're only 1 year older. Maybe she wishes she was getting married and she sees the two of you, her sibling and you, getting married and doing this whole thing. Maybe she's jealous. There could be a lot of that going on here. And if you are already kind of looking at her in a negative light, you've kind of put her in this category of selfish, cold, etc. She might be picking up on that and then feeding into it more. And I'm not saying all of this to like say that you're wrong, she's right. Of course, I don't believe that. But I do want you to think about, what control do you have here? What responsibility can you take? Because we can't control her. She's not the one in this conversation with us right now taking responsibility, and I hope she will. But since you are, there is something you can do. But also just don't feel pressure to invite the sisters, truly. Or don't invite them to this appointment. Maybe you invite them later to a fitting when the dress has already been picked out. But I wouldn't bring that many people to the appointment in the first place. When you say that you only want people in the room that will actually be constructive, like, what do you mean by in the room? Because when I went wedding dress shopping, only my sister would come with me into the dressing room when I was actually zipping up the dress. It would usually be my sister and one of the bridal associates, and then we'd go into the larger room where my grandma, my mom, and my mother-in-law were sitting. So there's no getting around people being in a room, but you will probably be able to pick one person to come into the dressing room with you. And maybe that's one of your sisters. You did say sisters, right? Yeah, your two sisters. So maybe pick one of the sisters, or you can switch off if you go to different appointments. But as far as like being constructive, you want people to be constructive in the process, I would think beforehand, like, what you mean by that. And be more specific with them. Like, if you are sensitive and you think that someone could say something that could piss you off or, make you spiral, which I think most people could feel when they're trying on wedding dresses. It's an emotional, sensitive thing. Like, even if you're super even keeled, I think trying on wedding dresses can be emotional. Try to be specific about what you want from them. Like, maybe it's, don't tell me what you think until I have told you what I think. Don't share an opinion until I've asked you for it. As explicit as you can be with others, the better. Hi, it's me editing. One thing I wanted to add here is that in addition to telling people what not to do, it's probably even more helpful to tell them what to do. So if there are specific types of encouragement you're looking for, you can tell them that. Like, maybe it would be helpful for whenever you come out with a dress, it would be helpful for everyone to like comment something they like about it. Okay, back to podcast days. Another free tip, do not decide on your budget beforehand and do not try on anything out of your budget. That's my other favorite wedding dress tip. My grandma bought me my wedding dress, which was very special for me. And before we ever went, she and I had a conversation about how much she was willing and could spend. So I had that number. And then when I went to try on dresses, I went first time by myself. I played hooky one day from work and was super nervous that I was going to run into my boss, because one of the spots I went to was actually, I knew she lived in the West Village. In the store I was going to, there was a showroom in the West Village, and I was so panicked that I would like run into her. Didn't. When I went, I said, hey, this is my budget. Like, please don't show me anything that's over it. And then I went with a friend another time, same thing. Don't try on anything out of budget. You're going to love stuff that's more than you can afford. Don't put yourself in that position. Don't do it. Don't do it. Seriously. I think that this problem is larger than just not inviting your future sister-in-law to the wedding dress. Like, I don't want to call it a problem, but this question is bigger than just the dress. But I do think you have one easy answer, is just to not invite any sisters. That's personally what I would do. I hope that while all of these letters were focused on bridal wedding situations, I do think that the interpersonal dynamics described here, I know that I was thinking of situations outside of just my wedding or when I've gotten married. I think, we all have conversations about money with friends that can get kind of thorny and awkward. Like the in-law and like the merging families dynamic, the friends think we're closer than we are. Every single letter I pick it because there's something in it that I can relate to, or that I've struggled with in the past, or that I'm thinking about now. And so I hope that even if you're not getting married, or your friends aren't getting married yet, I hope that there was something in here that spoke to you and that you'll be thinking about. And I'd love to hear what you all thought about these questions, about some of the stuff that I talked about. I will see you next week. Thank you so much for listening. If you are watching this on YouTube, say hello in the comments. Would love to chat with you there. If you listened to it but want to share some of your thoughts, YouTube comments are a great place to do that. Watch another video, listen to another episode. That's a great way to support. And you can follow me on Instagram at afhayes. And this just always quickly becomes like a list of things to do and ways to support. But I appreciate your support. I appreciate your support. And thanks for hanging out with me. I love you guys, and I'll talk to you soon.